Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and here we go. We're into episode 11 of the 1943 Batman serial entitled A Nipponese Trap. And joining me, as he's been since the very beginning, is author-editor Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Well, hello there.
I was going to say, and, editor of the now available, but I couldn't remember the entire title. So if you want to say it in the air.
I have really just foiled everybody with that title. My podcast partner, Fred Lefevre, he's struggling, but he's getting there with it. Man, I just thought I was being so clever and fun and everything, and yeah, I even had a couple people start to abbreviate it with me and calling it Z3.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So hopefully the next one will be an easier title. And for everybody out there who doesn't know what we're talking about, there's my new book out is Zlonk Zak Zowie, the Subterranean Blue Grotto Guide to Batman 66 Season 1.
Well, on the bright side, you can say that the book, though, is very thoughtful for those who are the kind who alphabetize their books by title. They can put it at the end, and if you alphabetize by author or editor, you can put it at the beginning.
Yeah, and book 2 and 3 are going to foil people again because the first book is Z and the second book is actually Biff Bam Eow.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Oh, well. But you can definitely find that book now available on Amazon, both print and ebook editions.
Yes, it's burning up Amazon.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is. So make sure you get yourself your copy there, folks. And let us know what you think then by leaving a review on the Amazon page.
Yeah, please leave a review. Yeah, apparently the book is just terrible because it's been out for like 2 weeks now and we've only gotten one review. But I think that's just me just being anxious to hear reactions to it. Amazon is actually kind of slowed down now if it's a non-essential item. I mean, personally, I think the book is essential, but so. Amazon doesn't necessarily think that.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. So I've been told that a lot of people are just getting their print copies. But if you need to know what we're talking about immediately, there's the Kindle version, of course.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right, so how about we get into this episode here, as I say, episode 11. I want to clear up something really quick.
Oh, wait, are we talking about something else?
We're talking about something else here. We're not here to talk about the book.
Okay. Okay.
I have to clear up something here that's been bothering me throughout this entire run. And I get it because it's 1943. We're not, entirely familiar, especially the actors and stuff. But it's the Batman, not Batman. There are some of them there who are pronouncing his name like he's, a Jewish man, Batman.
Right.
It's like those who used to say the Spider-Man. And I'm like, no, it's Spider-Man and it's Batman and it's Superman. I'm sorry, but no. It's really irritating me when I look out. It's the Batman.
Well, if that's the worst thing that's irritating you in this serial, you're doing a lot better than me, man.
And I'm sorry, I'm putting on a slight accent even as I say it because it's the only way I can affect that pronunciation. Yeah. But it's just awful. It's like, I'm sorry, and I know I get it because we've talked about this. 1943, the comic book's only been around a short time. It's not like you have any other reference to how do you pronounce the title character like we do now, but it just triggers me every time I hear someone say, I get Daka doing it because, Daka
because of his weird, weird accent. I'm kind of amazed at how often the characters say the Batman because in 1943, mostly in the comics, he's just Batman.
Right.
Yeah. So, but they do say that a lot, the Batman.
Yeah. True. That is true. And something? I like it, actually, that he's called the Batman.
Yeah, I grew up as a kid just saying Batman mostly because of the Adam West show.
Yeah.
I'm trying to dredge up a time where he is referred to as the Batman in that. It may never happen in the show. But, also growing up with lots of reprints in the 70s of the older stories, you saw and I could go either way really with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, that works for me here.
Yeah, since we're actually on that, I made a note to myself, and I don't know why it took 11 episodes for this to really jump into my head, but I thought about this a lot while I was watching this one, there's no sense of why Bruce is Batman in this thing. And maybe I'm thinking too hard about this, but there's no real reason for him to do, to dress up in this costume and to do what he does. And that led me to the thought of that we'd got no origin in this. And the origin existed by 1943. The origin existed actually in 1939. And some people could argue, well, it's still too early. They're not worrying about that, early in the character. But in the Superman serial, we got Superman's origin.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other
episode.
Yeah. So now I could also argue that Superman is a concept that you really needed to get the origin, i.e., that he's an alien from Krypton. And that you needed that. But again, I think it's like it goes back to what we've been saying all along. Batman is so ineffectual in this serial that it made me wonder, why do Bruce and Dick even bother? Why don't they just, be crusading citizens and just go out as Bruce and Dick and get into fist fights and lose a lot and all of that? There just doesn't seem very much reason to be Batman in this. He's not, they're not really like protecting anybody, I guess. Maybe they feel like they're protecting Alfred, even though Alfred's almost always with them on missions now.
Well, the thing is that we had gotten in that very first episode where they were rounding up another gang at that point, the Captain Arnold there going on about how he's the best cop he's got, that he doesn't pay and all that kind of stuff. So we established that he does do something in the way of protecting and righting wrongs and stuff. But then it's like we get mired in this whole thing and with the government, using him as a spy. And perhaps it would have been best if this whole serial had just been him taking on gangsters in a normal setting rather than this being a war footing, because a lot of it doesn't make sense in that regard. Even if you accept the fact that the government recruited him, there's other things like, and I've said this before, we do this in blocks of 2, so we're going to be doing episode 12. I have a big problem with a certain scene in episode 12 that we'll get into.
Yeah, and I think I know what you're referring to. It kind of goes back to what we talked about again earlier in our going over these chapters. It's this back and forth about him being a government agent. Supposedly, at this time, they didn't want him to be running around as a vigilante with the high level of patriotism that was going on during the war. That he had to be an official agent of the government. But then it is weird that he's more or less wanted by the police, and that they have to keep the whole thing secret about him working for the government. It's all kind of muddled, and they just kind of bring it up, when they want to, and then just sort of forget it, and it doesn't really work. It could have been streamlined a lot more, but to me it just doesn't really work. I almost wish there would have been a quick thing about the origin, and why a bat. He's not striking fear into the hearts of criminals by becoming a bat, which is the origin. the criminals are not a superstitious, cowardly lot in this. In this show, no, they and again in the fights in number 11, they go, it's the Batman, and that is actually a war charge, a war whoop. It's not, oh no, it's the Batman, and jump back and run. It's right. It's like, yeah, it's the Batman. We can kick the crap out of this guy. They just wade right into it, just jump right into fighting with him because they know that they're going to, kick his butt.
Yeah.
Anyway, we did it again. I swore I wasn't going to do that again, but so move along.
That's okay, because now I'm going to talk about, something that irritates me because you've got a character as clever as Batman that you set up these cliffhangers and they resort to the old-fashioned ta-da in the nick of time that we didn't see in the last episodes. Because as this episode opens,
Daka has received word from his Japanese agents that a supply of radium is to be dropped from a plane. But Batman interferes.
Here she comes. Come on, the Batman. Something wrong off the cars.
Hey, can I insert this real quick here? Can we talk very briefly about the title of this episode?
Sure.
To me, it's odd. I mean, I didn't live back in the time of World War II, but I know a lot of World War II trivia, and obviously I like the fiction that came out of that time. To call this episode a Nipponese Trap, number one, they really missed the boat here by not be calling this episode a Jap Trap. I mean, then they would really be within the time, because they keep saying Japs, through this whole thing. It's, right. Obviously it was a slur. I don't know why all of a sudden it's Nipponese. Now, of course, everybody's aware that Nippon is what the Japanese call their country.
Where's Mr. Bruce? Took one of the cars down that way.
It's said that the origin of the name Japan is a little bit unclear, but it seems to come from what the Chinese referred to Japan as a word. It's not a Japanese or Nipponese, word.
What happened, sir?
They shot out a tire and the car left the road. I managed to jump just in time.
Did they get the shipment, sir?
I'm afraid they did.
But I'm thinking that calling this a Nipponese Trap is again another slur, that they use Nippon not in any sort of reverence or polite nod to the people of Japan, but it to me it seems like they think it's more of a way to kind of mock than anything. It's just odd all of a sudden to have, instead of saying a Jap Trap or a Japanese Trap, suddenly we have a Nipponese Trap, because they're not really they don't really go on and on about that word in the show. So it's just odd. Some of these titles are really, really odd.
Well, it's odd because, and I did a little looking up and stuff too, and I didn't see anything that said using the term Nipponese was derogatory. And now it's just, they say it's dated, that you really wouldn't use that term now. But they didn't ever say that it was insulting in any way. So you're right. I mean, especially when you have the obvious choice there of going Jap Trap, especially when, it's not like Americans were genteel to the Japanese in that time.
Exactly. Right. Right. And in fact, I mean, I have heard saying nips, they said that too, I don't know, maybe almost as much as they said Japs.
Right.
As a slur, as a slam, I don't know. I get the sense that whoever titled this episode is using Nipponese in a derogatory sense.
Right.
Than anything. I suppose Jap Trap, even though that sounds like something that you would have heard at the time, to put them down, that would be too slangy for these titles, probably. But right. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, and as you say, it's not like they use that term throughout the episode or anything like that. So
no, not at all.
Who knows?
Yeah. But going back to what you were saying, yeah, you're right. We see Batman jump from the car before the car explodes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And why did he take the car?
I was asking that at the end of the last episode. I see there was no real explanation in the beginning of this episode, because now he's jumped out of the way and he's incapacitated for a moment. So it gives Daka's men the opportunity to go grab the radium that has come from the sky, and they take off with it. And it also leads to, yet again, somebody else being careless, because there's Alfred yelling out in the dark, "Where's Mr. Bruce?" It's
Mr. God. Bruce. Yeah.
You're fired,
definitely.
Alfred.
Yeah, I know. Really. Well, he needs to fire Dick also. Too. He needs to have a good talk with both those. When I'm in costume, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
Whew. You know what? Maybe what we should have called this is Batman Year One.
Okay.
Because it seems like they're still trying to work out a lot about this concept of I'm a superhero, I'm Batman, and they're working out a lot of things here.
They are.
Yeah. Now talk about how we get to see our buddy the caveman.
We get to see our buddy. I was going to say they get their money's worth out of that ride, though, because we not only see the caveman, we see them, and they're going through the whole tunnel and everything.
Yep.
And I love this. At this point now, we're at episode 11. Daka should be giving the warning. Do not say we finished him for sure, because you haven't. If you say we finished him for sure, we haven't finished him for sure.
Wait, I made a note of this. A little later on in this episode, they do it again. There's no doubt, they say.
Yes.
And I put no doubt times 2 twice in this episode. There's no doubt we took care of him.
I know.
Stop it. As inept as Batman is, he's not getting killed all the time. This was also interesting that they say that Chuck White is a member of Batman's organization.
Yes.
Daka says that. To me, again, that's another interesting concept, this thing about, at one point, Daka thought that there's more than one person that's running around as Batman.
Yes.
That does actually come up again in episode or chapter 12. We'll get to that, obviously, but this is an interesting concept that for some reason Daka has made this leap in logic or thought that there's an entire organization of Batman. I guess he gets to that point because Batman is constantly foiling him. I mean, they're foiling each other, I guess, but that Batman keeps popping up again, that he gets this whole idea that there's a bigger organization and that Chuck White is a member of it.
Yes. Yeah. I liked, also the fact that now we're getting back to the radium weapon, because Daka's like, I only need a few days to complete it.
Yeah. It's always kind of been there in the background, and they're constantly trying to get radium, and it's like finally they get some radium.
Now this is interesting because Bruce and Dick are talking about how Chuck White is now compromised because Batman was seen with him and stuff in the last episode and such, but they still have a chance with the guy that they put in custody. Maybe they can get some information out of him, and he doesn't know. Marshall, yes, and he hasn't seen Chuck White yet. So Chuck is arrested for casing a place to rob.
It's called prowling.
Prowling, yes.
There's even some dialogue about exactly what that is. I love that. Chuck goes, I think they call it prowling, and then they define exactly what that means too. It's very interesting. And I'm going to say this again. This whole Chuck White thing is really pretty interesting to me. because again, this is when Lewis Wilson, to me, shines in this. He doesn't really shine as Bruce or Batman, but I think he really kind of took to this, playing this Chuck White character. And it has become pretty interesting that, he goes to the extent of doing a false nose and his hair differently, whatever, and he actually talks differently. I actually kind of look forward to the Chuck White scenes.
I think a lot of that, though, that you're saying he doesn't shine is because we have our conceptions of who Bruce and Batman are, and he's not playing Bruce or Batman, really.
Yeah, no, and I get, that. Yes, we've said it millions of times so far. This is very early in the history of the character, but still, the idea was already there about the foppish, playboy, millionaire playboy, and Batman. And there's sometimes the script gives him a little bit of that to do with Bruce, but there, there's no real defining line. And I get this. In 1966, there was very little defining line between Bruce Wayne and Batman. I get that.
Right.
But again, I have a feeling that Lewis Wilson, this obviously wasn't going to be any sort of big career move for him. He probably, I would assume, felt silly running around in that costume. I thought about this more and more and more, that costume is very unforgiving, and especially the mask. Why they created it the way they did. There was a close up at one point, and you can see that the eye holes are barely there, and the silly way that they really dip the front of the mask down. It makes that they couldn't really have very big eye holes. I don't get it, why it came out to be that way. But anyways,
well, it makes for a great reveal later, which we'll get into.
I don't know if great's. I'm not looking forward to this. Keep going.
We'll get to it there. So Chuck is put in a cell next to our guy Marshall there.
Have a cigarette?
Thanks.
Keep the pack. I'll be getting out of here pretty quick. I'll get some more.
You just came in.
That's all right. I got connections. They'll bail me out of here in no time.
What are you in for?
Just for looking around a guy's place. Prowling, they calls it.
Ain't very serious. You done much of it?
Oh, I get around. And you're getting some funny places, too. Now, this one night, I'm prowling through a house when all of a sudden I gets into a place that's filled with bats. Flying all around. And there's one great big bat as big as a man sitting at a desk in the middle of the room. Well, I got so scared I really took a fast powder.
Sort of Batman?
Yeah, that's it. A man looking just like a bat.
You remember where the house was?
Yeah, Pinehurst way.
Listen, I know a man who'll pay you plenty for that information.
No kidding. Where's that guy?
Go to 112 Mill Creek Road. Ask for Croft. Say that Marshall sent you.
You see, he'll pay me dough if I tell him where the guy with the bats lives?
That's right. Yeah. You might tell him that Marshall, that's me, is locked up here.
I'll be glad to do that for you, pal.
Thanks.
To longtime Batman fans, this weird concept of they would imagine that he lives in a house somewhere, and it's just someplace you can go easily.
Yeah. And just the fact that Marshall falls for it so easily, I just thought was a bit much, but okay, Yeah. Now, I thought this was interesting. We didn't need this scene, but for whatever reason, they put it in there. Alfred and Dick go to a bondsman to go bail Bruce out. You know, we want to get Chuck White. He's my father. And it's I guess it's comedic and all, but I just was thinking, gosh, you could have just so easily said, your bond was paid, and that was it, and had him off and running. But we get this scene. So, okay, it's there.
Well, furthermore, it actually is useless because then they the henchmen go to Daka and explain the whole thing, and Daka says, we'll spring him.
Right. Right, but
it's completely useless.
Well, it's interesting because he says we'll spring him too. We'll bail him out and get him out, and then we'll take care of him. But they don't get to him first. The bailsman does. So what happens is you got to set up this. And I do like this. I thought the stunt work on this was really good for 1943. Bruce in the cab heading home, and Daka's men run the cab off the road right in the city street there in Gotham, Los Angeles, whatever, city street there.
Yeah.
And they run the cab off the road before driving off.
Listen, that was impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is weird or this is me being naive or whatever. I'm watching that and I went, oh, wow. And then I thought, wait a minute. It almost looked like miniatures.
Almost.
To me.
Almost.
And I went, oh, because I was like, oh, and then I went, oh, it's miniatures. And then for a split second, I thought that there was a screen behind the miniatures of the truck and the cab, and that they're filmed of people running towards it. But then, no, all of a sudden they're right in the scene and interacting with the vehicles. I don't know why it looked like miniatures. Miniature use was around at this time. In fact, most trains in productions of this time were usually miniatures. But that was really impressive. Mm-hmm. They really wrecked that car. Yes. That was a one heck of a stunt shot for this time, with that big truck coming in and slamming into the car and the whole bit. Yeah, I was suitably impressed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was really impressed with it. Bruce is injured, but he's all right. He's taken to the hospital, and he calls Alfred and Dick to come get him. They go from the hospital directly to the house that Marshall told Bruce to bring the information about the Batcave to. And I got two things that stood out. First and foremost, the fact that they go right in the front door. They don't sneak around. I mean, they scan the place out, but they go in the front door. And once again, there's Lewis Wilson. God love him. His accent is so thick.
It's like that place is well guarded.
That place is well guarded. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know. I mean, you know what? We know that he can change his voice as Chuck White.
Right.
Why they didn't direct him, or why he doesn't bother to, you know what? It's like keep his New England or Mid-Atlantic accent as Bruce. Okay, that would work. Do something different as Batman, and then you do, of course, the low class accent as Chuck White. Right. Nope. Not at all. Nope.
So, as I say, they go in the front door. The fight breaks out.
Well, I'm going to gin again.
We can't see anything from here. Let's try the door.
I'm taking a walk. It might change my luck.
At one point, they actually get the drop on the guys and have a gun to the men. But man has to go explore the rest of the house, and he gets knocked out, and so they
wait. No, you went too quick past
I
this
did.
thing about the gun.
Keep them covered, Robin, and look the place over.
It's Robin that has the gun.
Yes.
And Batman says, keep them covered. For one thing, it's really dark, and it's like, it would happen so quick, and it was like, whoa, wait, hold on a second here. And I had to put big stars by this in my note. Robin with gun. Okay. No. And by this point in the comic books, Batman does not use a gun. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of legend that's come up about this, about, the moment that this subject comes up, you get the people who go, oh, Batman used to use a gun in the beginning. If I remember correctly, in the first 11 stories of Batman before Robin comes along, I believe it's only twice that he actually has a gun. It's not over and over and over again. It's not a regular thing. There's one promotional drawing of him where he's got a gun, and I think it's a smoking gun, and I think he literally has it on him in two stories altogether. But again, this is just the shorthand. This is being made by people who are not the people making the comic books. They bought the rights. There's obviously no oversight by what would become DC Comics. I think it's national at this point. But yeah, to just so blithely have Batman be okay with Robin covering these guys with a gun. Mm. Now, granted, Robin's parents were not killed by a gun. It was Batman's parents that were killed by a thug with a gun. But it's just, for a Batman fan, for me, I pump the brakes at this point and go, oh, you know what it reminded me of? It's prescient of 1964, the so-called New Look Batman, when Julius Schwartz took over as editor of the Batman titles. And in the very first story that he puts out, Batman uses a gun. And he got howling fans sending him letters saying, Batman does not use a gun. And, Julia had to learn very quickly not to ever do that again. But the funny thing is it's that same thing. They defeat some criminals and Batman is covering them with a gun. Like he picks up one of their guns and covers them, and says not to move or whatever. It's a quick scene, but that really, really reminded me of it. And it's like, wow, that actually happened in 1943, except it was Robin, of course.
Right.
Okay. So, but that's minor compared to what we're coming up against. I don't know if I'm going to get through this next part, but you go ahead and start it off.
See. So Batman, like you said, he goes and explores the rest of the house. He walks into the next room and he's immediately knocked out by immediately. Just he's dead. And the sounds of that are enough to distract Robin so that Daka's men are able to jump him and this is weird. Like they knock him out and I'm saying it's a brief second because they ignore him. They drag Batman over to a chair where they're like, let's kill him. And then somebody else goes, no, wait, let's bring him to Daka. If he's this powerful, we should, if he's this, something like that. That was a weird line like that. And then they go,
and he says to make him a zombie.
Yes,
he'd be a powerful zombie.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, we could maybe Daka make him a zombie and stuff. And they go,
which is a fascinating idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see who he is. And they take off the mask and there's Chuck White.
Ugh.
Now, what made him think, oh, wait a minute, actually, because he was in jail as Chuck White, he was in the hospital as Chuck White, he just probably didn't peel off the prosthetics, he just put the costume on.
I thought about this, back when Chuck gets out of the hospital, goes to, Robin and Alfred, and they go immediately in costume to that house. I thought of that immediately. I thought, oh, well, that was so quick that he still got the Chuck White, makeup on. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, and then didn't really think much about it. This is very troubling for me, and I'm going to try to explain this whole thing. I'm the kind of superhero fan that I like the status quo to be maintained.
Okay.
I know people like it when things are shook up a lot and it causes, dramatic action. I'm not like that. The idea of secret identities is sacrosanct to me. I don't like stories where superheroes are unmasked or their secret identity is in danger or things like that. I don't like it at all. Number one, it's funny how this production is looking at this thing more realistically than the comics looked at it. To my knowledge, by 1943, in roughly 3-4 years of Batman comics, that doesn't really come up. There is no urge by criminals to unmask Batman and Robin. That will kind of come in later, a little bit later, but not very much. it's interesting that this is a production, obviously, with live flesh and blood people, and a little bit, it's grittier, I guess, in a way. And I won't argue that it makes sense in the real world that you're fighting a guy with a mask on and you knock him out. Sure. Like, what's stopping you? Go ahead. Just do it. The comic books don't have that. They have that suspension of disbelief for the most part, where they don't take that route. They don't think of that, or it's not important, or it's just a non-entity at that point. But why it gets to that point in chapter 11 of this serial, when they had ample opportunity to do this over and over and over and over and over and over again before now, but suddenly it's a thing. I don't know if that one guy who thought of it wasn't there all along. But anyways, I just hate stuff like this because it's just too easy. It's clever that, yes, he had the Chuck White makeup on. This has happened in the comic books before, and I get that. It's very clever. I just hate how easy it is, and it's like a violation. Ooh, I know people are going to come down on me for, saying this thing. I'm not equating it to, let's say, rape or something like that, but it is, to me, it's like a violation of the concept of a superhero. It's not realistic, and I get that, but back in 1943 in the comics, it wasn't exactly realistic either. And then, you know what? It's funny when Bruce wakes up, you would think that he'd like kind of freak out a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he could tell his mask is up, but no, he just, I guess he goes, oh, that's right, I have my Chuck White makeup on, but I would have had him like quickly like slap his hand to his face or his mask and kind of have a startled look on his face, like, and then maybe wade into the fight. I don't know, but he doesn't pull it down. He just keeps on fighting with it, with it on. This whole thing disturbed me at a level that I can't even begin to describe, but let's move on, and I'll try to pull myself together here. Well,
as we say, they pull the mask back, reveal Chuck White.
Wait, I love it. Wait a minute. You have no comments for that.
I have, because honestly, I don't have as much of a problem with the concept of them. They're bad guys. So to me, violating him in that way.
Okay. Then if you accept that in here, fine, that's fine. Then why didn't they do it before? You should be saying, wait a minute. I could have done that, but they could have done that in in the first
I will actually give you. Who is this clown who's dressed up? Because nobody else does it. But that argument I can't turn away. But to me, the whole idea of doing it, other than, like you say, doing it now just seems odd. And for that matter, the fact that all of them are just fixated on Batman. So what happens, Robin quickly comes to, nobody's pulling his mask off, and he runs in and he can make the call then to the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all clumsy. The whole thing is clumsy. Yeah. I grant you that. But you're hanging in on also the idea that it's like, this is a violation. Well, yeah, they're bad guys. Most of them, they're willing to, as we'll see now in a moment, commit the ultimate violation by taking Batman and Robin's life, or attempting to.
Yeah. Okay. What I mean by a violation is not on the criminal's part. Yeah. No, I get that. It's on the script writer's part.
Okay.
No,
because you prefaced it by saying I don't want to equate it to rape when you said violation.
Yeah,
I don't. That's where I thought you were going, was with the criminals.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, they're criminals, right? Because we know in the real world, an unscrupulous person is just going to do that,
right?
No. I'm sorry. I see exactly what you mean. No. To me, it's the people putting this production together. Mm-hmm. I don't like it. Even though I will admit it was a clever way to get around of his, real identity being exposed is by having him be Chuck White. Now, the funny thing is that, and I should have added this in, if it was that he was just Bruce under the mask, who's to say that they would have recognized Bruce Wayne? Because there doesn't seem to be any recognition of the person of Bruce Wayne in this production.
Right.
He doesn't seem to be a well-known millionaire in this. He seems to be a somewhat rich, somewhat well-to-do person. But I don't know if they've actually gone into it that he's a millionaire.
No, I don't
in
think
this.
So.
Yeah, so I think this has happened before in comic books. Once you get into the era where the writers are younger guys really thinking about this more, and comics start to be a little more realistic and aimed at an older crowd. I'm trying to think of one, but where somebody gets unmasked and they'd go, "Who is it? I don't know." Yeah, who's to say? Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. There's a '60s story where Robin is injured so badly that he's put in the hospital, and Batman says to the doctor, "I really appreciate you keeping Robin's identity secret." Because they had to take his mask off because he was so beat up, whatever. And the doctor says something to the effect of that he doesn't recognize him in the first place. He's like, well, no problem, because I don't really have any idea who he is anyways. So, again, it would have been kind of funny if it was Bruce and they go, who is it? I don't know. It's just some guy. Like, what did they think it was going to be? Some like big, pop star or movie actor or something like. I don't know. Hey, it's Marlon, or not Marlon Brando. Hey, it's Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart is Batman. Anyways, okay, we spent too much time on this. I'll get over it.
Well, it's you bring that up, and then that gets me thinking. Then it's like, if that's the case in the comic book, then Dick has to live as normal a life as Dick as possible for the rest of his life. Like, don't get noticed for anything because that guy could be looking at the paper one day and go, "Hey." Yeah.
No, I think possibly that doctor was probably disappeared and had a brain operation and then was put back into society, as somebody else. So yeah, but yes, right, yeah. Yeah, because out there's a doctor who would go, wait a minute, that's that kid that I operated on.
It reminds me of the very first Superman radio serial in which Superman, but he's not Superman yet. He hasn't put the costume on, so he's just Clark, and he saves someone. And, the guy's like, thank you so much. He's like, well, don't thank me. Don't say anything about it, And off he goes. And I'm thinking, eventually he becomes Clark Kent.
Yep.
Clark Kent is just as important to Metropolis as Superman in the radio serials. And I'm thinking that guy's one there that going, hey.
Okay, you're not supposed to think about any of that. Willing suspension of disbelief.
So anyway, getting back to the rest of the story here, Robin, like I said, gets a call. He gets to their radio and he makes a call. So they're all like, "Oh, we got to get out of here. The cops will be here and stuff." They knock out Robin again, and as they're all running out, they set charges. I guess the house was rigged to blow up just in case, or something.
Don't you do that?
Yeah, I do. It's just in case. Well, who knows? These days, maybe in an emergency, I might need to. But
yeah, right.
But it's just. It was weird. It's like, okay, so they got the house rigged to blow, and the last guy's running out the door, and that's when Bruce comes to and jumps him, and they start fighting, and the guy's like, we're gonna die, and such. He knocks him out. He runs over to Robin, who's now coming to, and the two rush for the door as the house explodes.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Oh,
I think this is it. I don't think they get out of this one.
I don't know. This one looks like it's a tough one.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is the end of Batman.
I mean, they weren't even close to that door when the place exploded.
I know.
I normally don't comment. I just put them on. I tack them on at the end as the trailers, for the next episode. But this one I got a chuckle out of because for once the narrator is addressing one of the characters directly. And he's like, "Watch out, Captain Arnold! That cigarette is poisonous."
Yeah, it is a fun one because they have to completely avoid Batman and Robin.
Yes.
A lot of times when it looks like it's Batman is killed, they go, will Robin go it alone? But no, that whole one is all about Julie.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's no mention whatsoever, and it's kind of funny that they have to skirt around that because there's some kid in the audience who is sitting there going, well, that's it. Wow, Batman and Robin are dead.
Julie, you mean Julie or you mean Linda?
Linda,
yeah.
Julie. Yeah, Julie Madison, Linda Park.
Yes.
Linda, no, whatever her name is.
Yeah, no, the next episode has a fair share of Linda in it.
Yeah, yes, it does. She's back.
She's back, yep. And I'm looking for, because I've got some interesting little trivia that I discovered this time around because I want to bring up another point that we've been talking about in our next episode.
Good.
But before we do that, before we move on to episode 12, we got to wrap this one up here. Overall, it's funny because, and I said this to you at the beginning of the show, we're talking about how it finally feels like, especially with the whole thing with Colton and the radium mine, that they were starting to build on this and get bigger and bigger. And this seems to go back to business as usual.
Yeah.
In many respects.
What is that? Colton? Is that who's what?
Colton, yeah.
I don't remember that character.
Oh, I know.
That is so long ago.
He better show up in episode 15. He better
But it's been so long. Like no one, if he does, nobody will remember him. I've kind of forgotten about him already. It's been so long.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Oh, okay.
Never forget Colton. I still have my armband on.
Yeah. Remember the Colton mine tragedy. Yeah. Yep.
So as we wrap this episode up here of the Batcave podcast, Jim, how are things going over at Comic Book Chaos? Oh no, that's not it. What am I saying?
It's just Comic Chaos.
Comic Chaos. There you go.
We
Sorry, Fred.
we're doing okay. I assume that once this episode is out, this whole coronavirus shutdown is still going on. I'm probably. But Fred and I have we figured out a way to record our podcast without being in the same studio together, which we've always done. So it's going okay, and it's actually giving us some things to talk about during the lockdown. And there's a lot of things going on in the comics industry. It's sort of imploding from the inside, so it gives us some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, especially with the news this week of like production starting again for DC and such.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of and then that raised a lot of controversy because of the DC's distribution plans and everything else. A lot of people, comic shop owners, very, very, very unhappy.
I can imagine. Yeah. So, folks, make sure you tune in then for Comic Chaos podcast there with our good friend Jim and Fred Lefevre. How do they go about getting it, Jim?
Pretty much anywhere that you can find podcasts. Just put in Comic Chaos podcast, iTunes, Spreaker, all those different ones. You should be able to find it pretty easily. We're on Twitter at Comic Chaos Pod, and then there's also a Facebook page for it, Comic Chaos Podcast.
Very cool. Very cool. So, folks, stay tuned. Jim and I will be back soon with episode 12, Embers of Evil. And we'll be continuing our looks here at, all those bad movies that were made in tribute to the 66 series. We've got me and Joe Stuber talking Filmation 77 and me and Dan talking the Batman 66 comic, all coming along here on the Batcave podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Until next time, citizens, take care. Jim, take care.
Take care.
That's a poisoned cigarette Captain Arnold is about to smoke. And Daka's men use Zombie Warren to lure his niece, Linda, into the spy's clutches. Who dropped that cigarette onto the oily rags? Can Linda escape from the blazing building? Don't fail to see Embers of Evil, Chapter 12 of Batman at this theater next week.